Hi, welcome to Family Law Friday presented by Florida Women's Law Group. My name is Betsy Corbett and I'm part of the marketing department. Family Law Friday is designed to be a resource for all women with a family law issue. Today we will be discussing domestic violence. Before we get started, I wanted to give you some information about our host, Heather Quick. Heather is the founder and owner of Florida Women's Law Group that advocates for women in North Florida. The firm educates and empowers women on the law so that they can find the strength to endure the process and end up better financially and emotionally. She's been a licensed Florida attorney for the last 20 years, with the majority of her practice being in family law. Please join me in welcoming Heather Quick to Family Law Friday.
Thank you so much, Betsy, and welcome. I'm happy to be talking about this topic today. I don't think that we can really talk about abuse issues enough. And the reason is because the more awareness we bring and the more we're able to discuss these types of things, hopefully more women will understand the position they're in or reach out to someone to get out of it, because it's not as easy as it seems. And I know that domestic violence can really present itself in so many different ways. And many times when there is abuse that is in, maybe it's not the actual physical hitting, but there's so much abuse that creates that fear, and there's threats that sometimes that isn't as obvious. And as in many relationships that are toxic, it builds up over time. And within that buildup creates this feeling of low self-esteem for the victim and a feeling of lack of control, because that, again, is part of it. And so much of that makes it so difficult to leave and difficult to even reach out for help. And so as we address this today, I just want you to know at Florida Women's Law Group, we are here for you if you're in one of these situations. And if this is something, as you hear more about it, affects you or someone you know, please reach out and allow us to be that advocate for you. Just now this is 2019 data. It does take a while. I know that in 2020, the impact of the pandemic on many households increased the domestic abuse for sure, and those types of issues. But in 2019, over 100,000 cases of domestic violence were reported to police. And that's just reported. And so that is probably just a very low amount compared to what was actually going on and not reported. And many times, that fact that, I never called the police keeps many women from taking that next step to get an injunction. And it is, I want you to know that that is not really a precursor. And just because you were afraid to call the police or just didn't think you had the courage to do so, please understand that there are still some things that we can do to help you, because many times that is very much a reality that the police aren't called. And then, of course, usually the abuser is like, well, the police aren't here, like no one's going to believe you. And, that's where, you buy into that. And many times that prevents women from taking any step or telling anybody, because they're like, well, he said nobody was going to believe me, and that's probably true. But, today I want to talk a bit about how, when, you're in a situation where there's domestic violence and you are the victim of that, well, now how does that play out in the divorce case? And how do those things intersect with one another? So, one, we do have our own statutes within Florida that really define and regulate some of the protection that has been created for victims of domestic violence. So you do have, your whole criminal side, and that's call the police, and there, a report sometimes is filed. Usually someone goes to jail. many times sometimes the victim of domestic violence goes to jail. And that can be because your abuser is a little bit more savvy with the police. He distorts it, and it can be a very, uncomfortable and difficult situation. I just want you to know, not to keep you from doing that, but understand that equipping yourself with the knowledge and the understanding of, one, how the law works, two, how the local jurisdictions work in domestic violence, and how the criminal courts work will help you understand that. So there's your criminal side. I'm not going to talk about that as much today. We don't do criminal defense here, but I was a prosecutor. I had a lot of experience in criminal law, and I can at least explain the system and some things that you would know. And we may add that on later in this series, just things to be aware of. Then we have it is under the family law division when we talk about a domestic violence injunction. But it's not the same as the divorce case, although you may or may not have the same judge. Yes, they're very related. But many times it's important to address an issue of domestic violence through the injunction process rather than the criminal process or the family law process. So let's talk about the injunction court and how that is handled. It is, you file a petition with the court, and what that provides you is a judge is going to review that petition within 24 hours, and you're asking for protection. You're in fear for your safety or the safety of your children. And when you're filing an injunction, that person, you're either married to them, they're either your husband, or you have a romantic relationship, or you have lived together. Now, within this encompasses family too, can be subject to domestic violence injunction laws and some of those procedures. It's very specifically identified within the statute how that works. So you definitely need some help, and if you're in that situation, who is doing these to you, is this an appropriate venue? As I'm talking about how it relates to divorce, I'm talking about today how married people, and they're in this situation. Once you file that injunction, and we do certainly help you here, and many of the clerk's office have extensive areas that can help you. You just have to go and wait, and they will generally kind of guide you through the process and get that filed. So, but I would recommend, especially if there's a divorce as well, to really talk to an attorney so at least you understand what's going to be required to be filed and what circumstances need to happen, because I can assess that, we're talking to an individual many times when they're here and they aren't thinking of the injunction process, but once I hear enough of the facts, I have concerns for their safety, and I will tell a client that immediately. I'll tell her I'm very concerned about the situation you've described, and whether or not the first step should be seeking a protection order for you through that injunction process, and then we can deal with the divorce later. And that it doesn't always come in that order, but it is usually what we advise, and of course it's based on what we've heard, because if that's an issue in your relationship and you're wanting to get a divorce, it's going to need to be addressed. And the courts understand, all the judges know what remedies are available to individuals, and they are going to expect, if you're wanting that kind of relief, that you're going to go about it in that way. So when we are looking at cases with an injunction, how does that play into the divorce? I will tell you that it's not as apparent as it would think, and I would never advocate and seriously would discourage anybody to think that this is a process by which to gain an advantage in the divorce, because if it's not a real situation Now you are lying under oath and you're filing things, and that is just completely inappropriate. It is not the right use of our judicial system, and it will make you appear to be vindictive and untruthful. And you never want to do that if you're going to have to be in front of a judge, and here you just don't want to do it. And it does really demean the whole process of real legitimate cases of domestic violence, which I've seen hundreds, and it exists. It crosses all racial, religious, and socioeconomic boundaries. It's everywhere, and you never know what's going on behind closed doors. And it's something that I certainly take very seriously. And if I don't think that what's going on in your household and whatever it may be is going to meet that, we're going to tell you that, and because we know what the court's looking for. But I will tell you that, one, like I said, if it exists, it's not a ploy, and this is not something that is negotiated against. If it exists, you file it and you move forward for the right reasons. Now, how will it impact the divorce? It will in some ways. Now, one of the things is if you get exclusive use and possession of the home, that's not going to affect overall, like, increase your percentage of the equitable distribution or your share of the marital assets, but it will allow you during this process of the divorce to have him removed from the home. And there are other ways, like we have, we do get women individual, exclusive use and possession of the home when there's no domestic violence. There's another route for that. So it's not like that's the only way, but the reason it's important in situations of violence is because of the violence. And I mean, too often, frankly, divorcing couples, someone ends up dead, and proportionally it's the woman who has previously been abused in the past. So this is, one of the mechanisms that the law affords you to protect yourself. So that helps in that, circumstance, just as far as allowing you some separation, because you may not otherwise have a place to go, and then, you are left, from your home, and also not feeling as safe. Now, within alimony, again, it's, we're in a no-fault state. So you can be married to the worst, most violent person in the world. Those aren't going to be how your divorce is evaluated on a monetary situation, just without getting more into it. But many times in a situation of domestic violence, again, it's a relationship of control. That's the issue. Yes, violence, but control on many fronts, and that may have prevented your ability to work. In some cases, the injuries and the lost time from work has prevented women from really, advancing their career, because any pulls from work means you're absent from home, and the abuser, is not going to have that. So it just really interferes. And you will also recognize and see in a situation of domestic violence, if your work and that time makes you happy, he's probably going to do everything he can to really ruin that for you. One of the other, so that may increase your opportunity, or really increase the factors and reasons why you would need alimony. Those are several factors. I know you've seen the many videos we've done on alimony, but that's how that might play into it. It also may significantly, well, I know it does. I know being in that kind of relationship does absolutely affect your own mental health and depression and or substance abuse, because many times you're trying to alleviate the everyday life that you're living. So those things are how, how allowing your attorney to understand what's really going on allows us to better represent you and better understand how that factor is going to play out in divorce. Now, the area where it's going to be the most relevant are when you have minor children. And the reason is because when you have children, the issues that the courts are looking at are what is in the best interest of the children. And if you have a situation where there's been domestic violence and abuse, well, the safety of the children are concerned, their emotional well-being is of concern. So therefore, the court is going to be interested, and it's going to be important in those situations because many women, and some of you watching today, I know you're going to relate to this, you're not going to leave because you're thinking, if I get a divorce, now who's going to protect the kids? Who's he going to take it out on? And that, you know, and I hear that. I've heard it before. It's, I think when you're out of that relationship, you can see and look back and know that's not rational. But until you stand up for yourself, you can't protect anybody. And if you think you're protecting your children by letting them watch you be abused, that I disagree with you on that. And I think that there are other ways. But you do have to stand up for yourself and swallow the fear. I'm not going to say forget it or pretend it doesn't exist. It's just part of that. You just you gotta move through it, because on the other side is your freedom, your self-esteem, your future, and your children's. That's where the facts of you know, domestic violence and abusive relationships, when we're dealing with the custody of children, are going to be so important to address. And if you're afraid it's going to make him mad to address it, well, you know, it may, but he's mad anyway, frankly, right? Otherwise, why is he abusing you? And bullies don't like it when you stand up for yourself, but they're just that, they're bullies and they cower down. And that's what we do here, is we stand up for you and we help you begin to stand up for yourself so that you can have a better future. And that, you know, if it's relevant to the case, we're going to tell you. And if we think you need to do something about it, we're also going to tell you, because our job as your advocate is to tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear, but also what helps you achieve, you know, your outcomes, your best life, and who you really are meant to be. If, you know, you are in an abusive relationship or know somebody who is, and you really just want to help them take that first step, please reach out to us, because we're here for women just like you to help take those first steps and, you know, make a difference for your life and, you know, those around you. So Betsy will let you know how to reach us.
Thank you so much, Heather, and thank you to everyone that was able to join us today. We are here for you, whether you are a victim of domestic violence or you have another family law issue. Please reach out to us at 904-241-0012 or look for us on our website at floridawomensLawGroup.com. Thank you so much for joining us.